Hey, thanks for joining me on The Castle. This is Jeff. Online I go by Another Castle. Today on the show I've got Jepheroth. He is a streamer, he's a blogger, he's a YouTuber. He's someone that I've admired for a number of years at this point in the content that he creates. Today I'm going to talk to him about his career path, some of his early experiences with games and game media, and hopefully I'll get to ask him a little bit about how he feels about the industry and where streaming is as a whole today. Stick around after the interview for the speed run, where I've lobbed some silly questions at Jeff, kind of rapid-fire style. We also have a great streaming tip from Sunclutch, another great streamer featured on a future episode of The Castle. Jeff, thanks for joining me today.
Well, thank you for that wonderful intro. I like the fact that I'm admired by anybody, so I appreciate that, my friend.
Well, I think we've talked about that before. You know that I got respect for what you do.
I'm glad people are watching, first and foremost. So, and the fact that people actually enjoy what I do, that's a heck of a bonus.
Well, I feel like improvement is something that you focus on. You never stop moving when it comes to streaming. It seems to be to me. I've seen you go through a number of different kinds of overlays, different kinds of programs and shows. Do you think it's important to keep reinventing yourself that way?
I think so. You know, kind of the way you kind of view anything is that the world's always moving. You got to move with it. And I feel I never want to get stale. I never want to get complacent. If I think something isn't right, I can only imagine people watching me and how they would feel. So I want to make sure that I keep things fresh and never sit back on my laurels. And I want to make my stream look as professional as I can. Mm-hmm. So if, the new hotness is coming, I want to make sure that I'm researching that to kind of get on board with what everybody else is liking, I guess. Not what they're doing necessarily, but what is kind of the hot trend,
Sure, yeah. So do you do a lot of research in your downtime? It doesn't sound like you have a lot of downtime with work and the podcast and all that, but do you spend a lot of time working on the stream when you're not live?
Very much so. I think a lot of the success of your stream and your brand has just as much to do with what you're doing when you're not actually streaming as when you are. In fact, even more so off stream. So I'm always looking for ways to improve what I'm doing, either from a content or from a visual perspective or audio perspective. Like how can I improve what I'm doing? I'm always thinking about that. Always, even when I'm at work at my cubicle, back in my mind, I'm thinking, what can I do to improve the Jepheroth brand? What can I do to make my stream look better? How can I stop in other people's streams, see how they're doing, and kind of take inspiration from them? So it's always constantly on my mind.
How long have you been streaming for?
Gosh, my first streams were back in the first Lego Marvel Superheroes game came out in 2013, 2014, that area.
We're going back, yeah.
So it probably was around that area. So I'd say about 6-7 years since I've did my first stream, though I've been taking it more seriously the past 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, you had mentioned the Jepheroth brand. It's something that you're cultivating. What you're doing now, is it a lot different than when you were first streaming? Like just the day-to-day?
Very much so. I think, when I first started doing it, it was more of a hobby and just more of a, hey, every once in a while I'll get on here and kind of do this. But, later on when I say, I want to become a fixture at this and I want to, get my foot in the door, I need to have this identity and I have to have this logo and this brand. And if I'm going to go in, I want to let people know I'm not just in it for a hobby anymore. I'm in this full stop. That's where the whole branding thing came in and said, I'm going to do this seriously.
And you talked about, or I guess we've talked about before, you blog, you podcast, you're creating content for YouTube. There's a lot of different things, a lot of different directions, but they're all sort of seem to be towards the same goal. Do you find that it's difficult to manage all these different kind of streams, or do you think they're complementary paths?
Oh, I think it's just how you approach it. Keeping in mind, using YouTube for more than just streaming or, the blogging stuff. The whole reason I started blogging was because I'm just a passionate gamer. Yes. Going back to, my first NES and then just falling in love with the industry. And that's kind of how I became a freelance journalist, is just because I love this industry so much. And it does take up a lot of your time to not only report about gaming and streaming, but also you have to play the games. And, as you know, games nowadays can take you hundreds of hours to see everything there is to see. It's a hard balance, and it involves a lot of planning ahead to, hey, I've got this thing coming up in my real life, and then prioritizing. Like you got to prioritize what's more important, you're in real life or the gaming life. And so there's a lot of factors that go into that behind the scenes.
Absolutely. I would love to stream more often than I do. I stream 2 days a week at this point. I'd love to up that, but it's just not a reality for, the whole family life thing.
Oh, sure. I mean, if you have a significant other, if you have kids, if you have your day job, a seasonal job like I do as well, like it's hard to make that schedule and stick to it. And no one should feel bad about that. I mean, streaming at its core, streaming should be fun. Streaming
Right.
should be because you enjoy streaming. That's kind of at the core of it, something you love to do. Prioritizing what's most important in your life, it's that kind of weighs into how much can you stream, how much can you handle streaming, because like I said, it's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think some of my favorite moments, going back to just sort of that being a fan of the industry and having that passion for it. Some of my favorite moments in your stream is really getting in there and just digging in, like just talking about a game from like 10 years ago and having a half-hour conversation about it. You have a lot of passion, a lot of knowledge for that kind of thing. I know you and I talk about we're both fans of Giant Bomb. I assume you've been following game magazines and websites and that sort of thing since long before then. What were some of the early influences or some of the early experiences you had with games journalism? What kind of made you want to get into it?
Well, I think the kind of the same thing that many people in our generation had at first, Nintendo Power.
Oh yeah, okay.
I grew up with a Nintendo Power and trying to get through Castlevania and through Legend of Zelda,
Yeah,
going
right.
through pulling the maps out of Nintendo Powers. That kind of first got my influence going, because just seeing these people talking about games, like, oh, this is great. People can write about this sort of stuff and not just play it, but also share the love with other people. And then kind of later on, EGM and
Yes.
tips and tricks. I had a subscription to that too. And then kind of late '90s, 2000s was kind of when GameSpot took off for me. Things like GameSpot and IGN started taking off for me there. That's where I met the guys that I followed into Giant Bomb. Jeff Gerstmann and Brad Shoemaker and Ryan Davis and all them. I found them through GameSpot. And also me working at GameStop was kind of my first real job, was working at GameStop back in 2003.
No kidding. I didn't know you worked there.
Oh yeah, I was. I think a lot of us in the industry have gone through the Funko Land, software, etc.,
Yeah,
GameStop
right.
doors, and seeing Jeff Keighley, who was part of GameStop TV, so he would be playing on the VHS that we had looping in the store, or DVD
Right.
looping in the store. That's how I first met Jeff Keighley, and just kind of growing up with people who were as passionate about gaming as I was. And that's when I first kind of sparked my interest of, hey, I want to do what they do, because I'm also this passionate and I also know as much about gaming. So that's kind of was my foray into wanting to get into the business.
Did you ever get into One Up when that website was big?
Yeah, it wasn't as much as that the GameSpot stuff was, but yeah, I would frequent One Up. I still check out Polygon every now and then too, and of course Game Informer came around as well. I still have my magazines come in. I forget I had a subscription still, but every month I get my Game Informer magazine. So yeah, a lot of different influences, and One Up was definitely one of them.
Yeah, I think especially with podcasts, I felt like One Up was such an early adopter of the medium. They had so many shows, and a lot of them were really high quality for the time. Like podcasts back then, I don't know if you remember, a lot of them weren't great, or at least a lot of the
Right.
big ones.
Still trying to find their way for sure.
So that was a big influence for me. I think Something Awful. I don't know if you're familiar with the old Something Awful forums at all.
I had heard of that, but I never got too much into those.
They were kind of the pioneers of the Let's Play. So, and a lot of the times back then, it was a series of screenshots, rather. They'd play a whole game through and just tell the story with screenshots. And
Oh,
then it kind of evolved from there to when YouTube started to get bigger, they would do video playthroughs. And that kind of coincided for me with when Giant Bomb started doing the quick looks. Like that format, it's so big everywhere now, that quick look format. They don't call it the same thing, but just
sure.
the way that it plays out. I feel like we take it for granted, but that was such a big thing back then.
Oh yeah, I've stolen so much. Sorry, I've been influenced by
Yeah.
so much of what Giant Bomb does. That's kind of why I love that site so much, is the personalities and stuff. So I've that quick look format I've taken to Nerd Bacon and do like these first looks, and I just say, here's I record me getting my very first taste of this game, or I want to showcase this game for people who want to see it, so I can put it on Nerd Bacon, kind of the same way that the Giant Bomb does. Also, the Ranking of Fighter stuff. I'm a big fighting game fan. I
Yep.
took that concept and ran with it. So there's a lot of influence going out there from a Giant Bomb perspective too.
Do you play a lot of games off stream? Do you do a lot of gaming that's not meant to be recorded or presented?
And this might be a side effect of just, me racking my brain about the content is that there are plenty of games where I tell myself to not play unless I'm doing content creation.
Okay.
Like I'll dabble, like I'll play a couple matches of Overwatch or Call of Duty or something kind of off stream just because I can, or if I can't
Yeah.
fall asleep or something like that. But if I want to dive into like a story heavy like RPG, my brain tells me to not play it unless I'm doing some content with it.
Absolutely. I feel the same.
And I feel like at some point it's kind of like almost like a streamer's regret or like streamer's guilt or something like that. But and I got a bunch of retro consoles here that I want to preserve and do like a video library about this sort of stuff. So it's just I have so many ideas in my brain. It's hard for me to sit there off stream and play a game on my own time, even though I've tried to. It can be done, but it gets harder for me to do that kind of off stream the more that I think about doing content creation.
Yeah, I find that there's games that I've pushed to the side and just haven't played because I keep saying someday I'm going to play it on stream,
Right.
and then I don't. The Outer Wilds, or sorry, Outer Worlds, the RPG one.
Yeah.
For months I've been saying I gotta play that, but because I haven't played it on stream, I haven't even looked at it.
And for something
So,
like for me, like Animal Crossing in a few weeks, and
oh yeah,
all I
right,
can think about is how much I can't wait to stream that game.
right.
And I'm gonna pick up Doom Eternal the same day as well, and and there's just two way different games, and I'll probably stream or create content for both those games. But I need to tell myself that it's okay to play games without people watching.
Just for the
It's
yeah,
okay.
right.
It's a double-edged sword, really. When you create content, you want to create as much content as you possibly can with your library for sure.
So when you play games and you're not streaming and you're doing it just for fun, sort of thing,
Mhm.
do you have a difficult time kind of shutting down that critical mindset? Like you're so in tune to creating content or that journalistic side. Do you pick apart games when you play them for fun?
I pick them apart for sure, and I think I don't want to turn that brain off
Okay,
because I know how much love is being put into it from the developer, and so I feel like it deserves that critical eye. And granted, it is a fine line though too. I don't go into a game looking for what's wrong with it,
sure.
and that's through experience at this point. I've been doing this for so long. I have zero expectations for any game when I boot it up for the first time because I want the game to take me on the ride. And while I'm on the ride, that's when I start picking, okay, that worked, that didn't quite work, this worked, but figuring out how much the negatives outweigh the positives. I'll give you an example. I'm trying to get through Death Stranding.
Yes,
And
a good example for this conversation, I would say.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I'm trying my best to get through Death Stranding. And first of all, it's a very divisive game. So many people love it, so many people hate it. And I can kind of see where both camps are. And I feel like having that critical eye is what puts me in the middle, basically. Seeing the things that are good and bad, as opposed to just focusing on the good or focusing on the bad. With that critical eye, I can then say, hey, this worked. It's beautiful. The soundtrack is fantastic. I get where you're going with the story. The bad is like, oh god, it takes so long to get to a certain place, and this inventory encumbrance stuff is just awful. And so I feel like the critical eye keeps me in balance, so I don't tip too far one way or the other.
I absolutely agree that a game doesn't have to be a 10 out of 10 for it to be enjoyable.
Right.
I think you can play something like Death Stranding. You can say, there's some flaws with this thing, but it's done some interesting stuff. Worth it to play.
Sure. And like even Breath of the Wild, people say it's a masterpiece and one of the best games ever made. It is a masterpiece. There are things that frustrate the crap out of me about it. Like
Yeah, right.
the inventory system drives me nuts. Every time I swing a sword, it breaks. Instead of going to my next weapon automatically, I got to open up the inventory, scroll to
Right.
the right weapon, have that break, and it's like, well, I don't want to do any fighting. But again, that doesn't take away the fact that that game is absolutely stunning, and that game is one of the best of this generation. You have to see both sides of the coin, or else you'll be that Nintendo fan person of, oh my god, it can do no wrong, or being that person on Twitter just saying, oh, it's the worst game ever made. You have to have some balance.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And you had touched on it earlier, and when you start up a game, you're in for the ride. You're open to what they're giving you,
Sure.
which I think is important. I think being overly critical isn't beneficial. And I don't think it's very entertaining to watch a streamer who's trying to shit on everything.
Sure.
I've talked to a couple different streamers, kind of what their approach is or what they see themselves as a streamer. Some folks are more entertainers. They'll be silly or they'll have large reactions, that kind of thing. Tell me if I'm reading this wrong, but I feel like you're more approaching it from that informational point of view. You're trying to offer your opinion, you're trying to offer fair criticisms, that sort of thing. Is that a role that's conscious or just what you fall into?
I'd say it's conscious. I mean, first and foremost, I want to be entertaining. That's kind of the big thing. I'll be entertaining, but of course, everybody's idea of what's entertaining is different. So
Sure.
I want to entertain me. If I'm entertained, then you're entertained. If I'm bored, then you're bored.
Yeah.
And I make no bones about it. I consider myself an expert at gaming. Not actually playing the games, but there's not many people who know more about the industry than me.
The history, the
Yeah, there's the history of games, knowledge of gaming, characters, stories. I'm not a Rain Man by any means. I'm not going to sit here
yeah.
and rattle off the dates of when Spyro 2 came out on the PS1. I'm not going to be able to do that. But I'm one of the most passionate gamers out there. I love this industry. When people come to my stream, I want them to see that I appreciate the industry. I want them to see how much I appreciate what's happening, this medium. I want people to see my passion and my knowledge because I'm happy to share that with the world. I'm not trying to brag and say I know everything and haha, you don't. But I want people to become more knowledgeable by talking to me about something that I'm so passionate about.
Yeah, and I touched on it earlier, but you're very open to conversation that way.
Absolutely.
When I come to the stream, you're playing the game, but we're having a conversation about this game, about the one that came before it, about the folks that made the game, all that stuff. You've got something to offer pretty much every time.
But thanks for that. I appreciate that. And yeah, it's sure the stream's about the game being played on your screen. There's the whole backstory. If I'm playing Overwatch, I want to talk about the character's background, talk about the skins I'm wearing. I want to talk about the location I'm in and other Blizzard titles, World of Warcraft, talk about Diablo, stuff like that. Because one conversation can spin out into other conversations. And I feel like a really big part of streaming is having that conversation. Because I could be sitting here just playing games without people watching me. But if somebody's watching, trying to engage, I want to make sure they feel that they're welcomed, first of all,
Right.
and that they're also engaged in the conversation. It kind of help driving me as a streamer as well.
You mentioned that you spend a lot of time into other folks' streams, seeing what they're up to, seeing what they're using, what they're leveraging. Do you jump into a lot of brand new streams?
Yeah, because I know how intimidating it can be to start streaming, especially now. I mean, it probably wasn't as intimidating back then, when I started doing it as it is now, because it has become so mainstream. Streaming is lifeblood right now of so many people. I do what I can to kind of help people realize that it is hard. It can be intimidating to kind of get into streaming, but just know that whatever I can do to help ease their mind is definitely something I want to help with and support, hashtag support small streamers, whatever. I want people to realize that it's going to be okay. Take a breath.
Yeah, those early streams, you're streaming to literally 0 people are tough.
Sure, and maybe your camera isn't as HD as you want to be, and you're using your
Right.
headset microphone. It sounds terrible, and in Call of Duty, you're going 0 and 24. It's like it happens. We all had to start somewhere. The more time you put into it, the more people appreciate it. We all had to start somewhere, get our base going, and then slowly build up if you want to continue that route.
You're a bigger streamer than I am, but I think we're at similar levels where there's still often those streams that we have where you're just not happy with the result. Not that you're unhappy with the content, but you're unhappy with maybe the number of views or the amount of engagement in chat, that sort of thing. Forgive me if I'm misreading, but I think I've seen times when you've had those streams that feel a little dead.
Oh, yeah. I've definitely had some times I'm like, I'm just spinning my wheels. My viewer count's at like 1 or 2, and I'm like, well, okay. But that's kind of me early on. At this point, whether it's one person or 1,000 people watching, I want to do an entertaining show because, especially now with all being archived, people can come back to these shows in a month from now and they see me being all mopey and crappy. Well, then they go back and they go away. But you never know who might be watching a month, 2 months, a year down the road, and you may pick up traction somehow. But if I can give any advice to a streamer right now, it would be don't worry about those numbers. Just the thing to worry about is put yourself out there and then let that grow organically.
But that's so easy to say, Jeff. You can just say that, but the number's right there the whole time. It's
I
staring you in the
know.
face.
I know. And it can, especially early on, it can be hard to
Yeah.
sit there and just see 0, 1, 2, and just go, oh man, I'm not getting anywhere. It's a climb. It's a grind. It's not a get rich quick scheme. It's not, it can be tough for sure. You got to figure out what's most important and block out what's not.
All right, I want an honest answer from you on this.
Sure.
Do you go into other streams, other channels, and watch their VODs?
Depends on the content usually.
Yeah.
I know I'll give a shout out to my friends over at New Legacy Inc. who are on Twitch, do a lot of just dumb wrestling stuff.
Okay.
I watch that stuff all the time because it's very entertaining. They're partner streamers. They're a group of guys who go into WWE games and just break them, and which is not hard to do if you've seen 2K20.
Lately, anyway,
it's not hard to do.
Yeah.
But I love those guys because they're just they're funny, they're engaging, and I'll go into like my friends who I know in real life. I'll go into their VODs and watch what they're doing.
No kidding.
Yeah, I have a lot of Twitch friends in real life that I'll go watch their stuff. If I want to get better at, like, say, Hearthstone, I'll go to my buddy Mighty Rye, who's won tournaments. He's on his way to being a Twitch partner. I know it. He won't admit to it, but I'm sure he is. But he plays Hearthstone all the time, and so I go watch his stuff and kind of learn some tactics that way. But kind of the same reason I would watch them on YouTube as well.
I'm very much a proponent of, if I expect somebody to do that for my channel, I got to do it for somebody else's channel.
Right.
If I expect other people to come to my YouTube channel, I have to go in and look at theirs as well.
It's a give and take thing. And, if people respect me and what I do, then, the least I can do is check out what they're doing too.
Yeah.
If they're giving me their time, I'll give them my time.
So I'm getting a little off track, though. What I wanted to ask you about this was that I feel like I've seen you try different things in an effort to stir yourself out of a lull, maybe.
Sure.
Maybe I'm coming off too harsh. I think you know what I mean.
Right.
One of those things that I saw, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I know that you made that transition to Mixer there a few months back. Was that part of an effort to try and get to a new audience or to grow your audience?
Yeah, kind of a bit of both, because I think more eyes are going to Mixer. Obviously, with Ninja and Shroud, both taking a lot of people over to Mixer. And the way that Twitch was being handled, kind of behind the scenes, with a lot of their support stuff and,
yeah,
a lot of the politics behind the scenes, which you're going to have that anywhere you go. But there's a lot of negativity and toxicity going on over Twitch that made me say, you know what, I'm going to give this Mixer thing a shot. It's becoming popular. It's kind of on the up and up. It's on the rise. It still is. And at the very least, as someone who's, a freelance journalist who's in the industry, I want to know all what's happening. I want to be abreast of the latest trends, and Mixer is definitely trending. Microsoft will lean more into this with the Xbox Series X. Mixer is like front and center on Microsoft's pages, so it's becoming a bigger and bigger thing that's becoming more and more serious. So it's just another avenue I think is well worth checking out.
So what was your experience like when you started on Mixer there?
It was very positive. I find Mixer's community to be a little more positive.
Okay.
Willing to engage. Twitch, I mean, I don't want to say it's... So Twitch is WWE to Mixer's AEW.
Okay. You're over my head already, brother.
Well, people who listen, I'm sure will get that. But, like,
fair enough.
Twitch is the mega power of streaming.
Yep.
And Mixer is kind of the up and coming with a lot of passion behind it. I feel like Mixer is more targeted towards people who stream for game's sake, whereas Twitch is more like your esports place. And a lot of the just chatting, a lot of the other different areas like cooking shows and podcasts and body painting. And there are still a lot of people who do, stream on Twitch and play a lot of games, and it's great. But I feel like Mixer is kind of their main focus is the gaming.
Correct me if my memory is wrong here on this one, but did you kind of put Twitch on hold while you tried out Mixer at first, or
I did.
Am I imagining that?
No, you're not imagining that. I definitely just put a pause on Twitch and just said, hey, I'm going to Mixer. I'd been on Twitch for several years, a Twitch affiliate, and I had a lot of friends over there, and, I was building up a little bit of a head of steam there. So I would be robbing myself of opportunities. I don't care about money. I don't stream for money. It's nice to have it, but I don't stream.
Yet you don't, man. We're going to get you there. You're going to be streaming for money soon.
Gosh, boy, wouldn't that be great? But again, if I could give advice, don't stream just for money.
When you started with Mixer, did you take a different approach to your streams, or was it kind of doing a similar composition as when you were on Twitch?
It was kind of the similar thing. And I think what I've always told myself with streaming is just be true to who I am. So you're not going to see me there, doing these hot takes or saying controversial things or playing music and dancing in my living room in my underwear. It's not going to, it's not doing that.
That's a much different channel, yeah.
Yeah, that's a whole different line of term of service there. No, I just stayed true to me and did what I did best and took over to Mixer and just, again, showed my passion for gaming. Maybe focus a little bit more on Microsoft things because it's a
Okay.
Microsoft. And I know, like, if you go to Xbox Game Pass on the PC, if streams are happening playing that game that you're looking at, those streams pop up on the game page. So I was kind of leaning more towards playing things like Gears 5 and Halo Master Chief Collection, stuff like that, and Forza, just to kind of get into the Microsoft state of mind. But the content itself of me just sitting there having a good old time playing games, that part never changed.
You didn't take a different approach to that core
No,
aspect of it. Yeah.
nope. I just kind of kept my excitement up there and, kept my passion as high as it ever was.
Is your YouTube content, is that something you've been pushing more lately? I feel like I've seen more of your content lately, or maybe it's surfacing to me more. Was it a conscious push?
Very much so. Not only is YouTube another platform, and I think now you're getting more eyes on that from a streaming sense, thanks to Blizzard and their esports going over there, so like Call of Duty League going over there, Overwatch League going over there. You're seeing more eyes just shift over to YouTube streaming capacity, but also the fact that as somebody who has a background in acting, it's kind of the difference between going to live theater or seeing a movie. I can do both with YouTube. I can stream and create these videos with some production value behind it. Kind of like my top 10 games of the year video I did was a lot of production value behind that. And YouTube gives me that chance to kind of do both over there. And the growth has been there really just through word of mouth, putting it on my streams and putting it on my Twitter and stuff like that, and just saying, hey, I do this now too on the side. It's not been my main focus, but I keep updating it with like Let's Plays and NBA content I'm doing over there and WWE
Yes, that's
content before
right.
that
The G
broke.
League, yeah.
So, and with G League stuff, I put pretty close to my heart as somebody who's worked in the G League for the past 12 years. So being able to have that tool was very necessary. And say I joined like last summer, but I really started updating it around September, October of 2019, and just already getting subs, getting comments, getting likes. I mean, that first video of me doing the NBA G League draft and just kind of doing my intro, that's over 1,500 views.
Oh,
And
wow.
I had a previous YouTube channel many years ago where I think maybe combined I didn't have 1,500 views
Yeah, right.
on that stuff. But and I think YouTube's became more of a legitimate thing. Again, not for streaming purposes, really. But I think when you think of videos online, you think of YouTube. So it would be foolish to not at least tap into that at some point.
I'm going to put a link in the show description for your video, your top 10 games of 2019. I think it was an excellent video
Well, thank you.
and a really good example of how to use YouTube. Honestly, I find a lot of streamers just sort of upload raw streams. Like they'll upload a video that's quite long, and that's something that I think I've seen some posts on yours similar to that. I've seen, I've done that in the past. That sort of shorter form, that more heavily authored stuff.
Sure.
I mean, that was really well produced. I think that is really going to draw eyes to your channel, or I expect it does, I should say.
Well, thank you. And yeah, it was kind of an overnight thing, and took a lot of scripting and a lot of take twos, take threes, take fours
Yeah,
to
right.
make sure I didn't stumble on my words. But I'll also mean the software that I use for the editing is free. Like that video cost me
Ooh.
nothing to actually get going.
What did you use to edit the video?
It's called Hit Film Express,
Yes, okay, I've used that.
and I've used that for that. I've also used it for my new transitions on the stream. I've used Hit Film kind of like you would After Effects.
Besides producing video content for your own channel, you work with a site called Nerdbacon, and there you're hosting podcasts, you're writing articles. There is that sort of traditional journalism in there. You do a lot of great articles that kind of either dive into the past in games, what's coming up, more analysis, but then there's also that content where you're creating videos for YouTube, you're creating a podcast, that more indie streamer lifestyle thing. Is that intentional? Are you trying to meet both worlds?
Absolutely. Our plan with that is we love where we are, but we can't forget where we've been. And my co-host of the Game Tasty podcast show, he is great with the printed word. He is great with telling a story. His name is Dave the Watchman. Go and find him on Twitter and watch the Game Tasty show at nerdbacon.com. But he does a prediction article. Beginning of every year, he does a full-length prediction article, one that you need some time and get a cup of coffee and just sit back and relax, because he will take you on a journey. And it's fantastic. I think people underestimate the stories that can be told with the printed word. So we want to make sure that we appeal to those who like a good written article, like a good story. Also, we want to appeal to those who just want some quick video content. We cover our bases and bring the entire spectrum together.
Do you feel like working with the team, has that benefited you? Do you find it's easier to grow an audience, or you found different voices and anything like that?
If it wasn't for me being a part of Nerd Bacon, I would not have been able to go to EVO in 2017, 2018 and cover it as part of the press. I would not be getting review codes for games if I was not a part of nerdbacon.com, because it looks a lot better when you apply for something like that when you have a brand as opposed to, hey, I'm a dude. So it's been an absolute life changer, and being able to rep a brand like this and be a part of this wonderful team and having these great opportunities. Like I said, I would not be able to cover the biggest fighting game tournament of the year in the world as part of the press if I was not part of Nerd Bacon.
Well, you guys put together some great stuff. I absolutely recommend everyone go check out the site. I went back and read some of those end of the year summaries that you're talking about from Dave. Really well written, really entertaining, and it calls back to I miss the old magazines. I miss the EGMs and that sort of thing, right?
I do too. I miss a lot of those Nintendo Power stuff, a lot of those old ads that they used to put in there that just made no sense with the game and actually kind of more gross than anything else. But it was just
the 90s, eh?
Yeah, and it's a bygone era. A lot of our thing is that he's a little older than I am. I think you and him and I are kind of in the same age range. We don't want people to forget the old school gaming. It kind of kills me when people say their first console was the GameCube. I'm like, God dang it. Don't tell me that.
I was at a high school at that point.
God damn. Like, I remember playing a Pong console and kids like, what the hell was that? Like, oh God. We don't want people to forget the wonderful history of gaming and the terrible history of gaming, because we wouldn't be where we are today without that.
What's your goals for the future, for the site and for your own channel?
First and foremost, we want to get the podcast and do it regularly. We want to improve upon that. We want to, get on iTunes. We want to grow that. We're basically on everything but iTunes right now. But our goal, we want to do more events. Our plan this year is we want to, barring what's happening with certain viruses out there, we want to go to more events. We want to go to EVO again. We want to go to Combo Breaker. We talked about E3 a little bit because E3 is on the decline with people not being there. And I feel like the importance of that is kind of waning a little bit. So we kind of want to go while it's still relevant. So
I think that might have passed, brother.
Probably.
I think it might be too late.
So it might be easier now to go.
Yeah, fair enough.
We want to get the name out there to more people, because I feel like from a local sense, we're okay, but we want to become more well-known. There are plenty of things that we have called. There's plenty of things that we had said first that have become true, but nobody took us seriously because we're nobody. Compared to the big players in the industry, you're
still on your way up.
Yeah. We're on the way up, but we've been on our way up for the past 3 or 4 years. We want to finally break through that glass ceiling.
Awesome. All right. Well, listen, I really appreciate you taking some time to talk to me today. Tell me again, where do people find your channel? Where do people find the Nerd Bacon website?
Oh, sure. Well, if you want to follow the Jepheroth stuff, you can follow me on Twitch, twitch.tv/Jepheroth, Jepheroth. Yes, named myself after Sephiroth, my favorite villain of all of gaming history.
Yeah, we got to talk about that later, but anyway.
FF7 remake, baby. Oh my God. It's going to be so good. On Twitter, @Jepheroth. If you go to YouTube, search for The Jepheroth. Otherwise, for Nerd Bacon, it's nerdbacon.com. We do a podcast over at twitch.tv/nerdbacon for our Game Tasty show. Twitter is at @nerd_bacon. There's a group of us, both locally here in Des Moines. Also, we have a correspondent over in Australia who absolutely loves Fire Emblem. So if you want to ask her about Fire Emblem, she's the girl to talk to. Yeah, anywhere you find Nerd Bacon, we're going to try to expand more. Mashcast, D-Live, we tried that as well. So look for Nerd Bacon, also on Facebook at Nerd Bacon as well.
Awesome. Thank you very much. You get to stick around for the speed run?
You know it.
All right. Coming up, we put Jeff through the speed run and a streaming tip for us from Sunclutch. All right, Jeff, you ready for the speed run?
Go for it.
There's going to be 10 questions. I'm going to ask them quick. I want quick answers from you. Don't hesitate for me. I want honest answers.
When do I ever give quick answers, though?
Yeah, I know. This is why I'm warning you.
I just talk for days, man.
Okay, here we go. 10 questions.
All right.
Number 1, what was your first job?
First job, actually, was GameStop.
First job was GameStop? Wow.
First job was 2003, Southside Des Moines GameStop. GA.
Already too much. Already too much. Buzz.
Sorry.
Are you a dog person or a cat person?
Dog person.
What's the best Beatles song?
Ooh, Paperback Writer.
Oh my god, okay. Marvel or DC?
Marvel.
Socks for Christmas. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Great thing.
What was the last book that you read?
God, I read A Clockwork Orange recently.
You read A Clockwork Orange recently?
Again.
How many times have you read that book?
2 or 3 times.
What was your first fighting game?
Super Street Fighter 2 on the Genesis was my first home one.
A 6-button controller, I hope?
Not at first.
Oh, really?
It helped me get a 6-button controller. But I remember I played a lot of Tekken in the arcades though too.
What was the best wrestler in the 1980s?
Best Randy Savage.
Oh yeah, okay. I actually said oh yeah, unconsciously.
Yeah.
There we go. What are your favorite pizza toppings?
Pepperoni and sausage. Oh, meat lovers is all I'll do. If you put pineapple on pizza, you're a heathen. Knock it off.
Totally agree. 100% with you. What's the console that had the best game library growing up?
Oh God.
Clock sticking.
I didn't own a SNES growing up,
okay.
So I can't say that. So PS1.
You can still say it. PS1 was pretty good too, though.
Yeah.
Well, that's all the questions I got for you. Great job. You're way too slow.
But
I
could talk for days about PS1. It's 25
right,
years
thanks,
old this year.
And now a quick streaming tip. Yay!
Forget all of these expensive lighting solutions that you see marketed to entry-level streamers. These can run you upwards of $250 for something that you can get at most Walmarts for $40 to $50. Look for portable work light kits in the home improvement section. Make sure to position the light in front and above you and pointing down. This will achieve similar results to the more expensive kits.
Well, that's everything for our second episode of The Castle. Thank you so much for listening. You can find me online at Twitch at Nether_Castle. My Twitter's the same, Nether_Castle is where you can find me there. Please give me your feedback. Let me know who you want to hear in a future episode. Let me know what you think of the show. Reach out. I'd love to hear what you guys think. Thanks very much.